What's up, everybody? Stephen A. Williams, president and founder of the creditrepairshop.com. I wanted to get to this here. Um, Dealing with Midland funding, we go back and forth with them with all types of stuff. And I want to tell you that they are in court being sued by the Consumer Protection Division of the United States. And I want to tell you what the things that they've done, and it's really about the things that I've always talked about. And Midland funding, and they have several different, names, but they got Midland Credit Management, Acceptance, which Acceptance is also included in this, and also Encore Capital Group. But when I've done the responses for the citations, I've always seen that some of these companies have a long list of LLCs that they put in place, and I always believed that that was for the reason of protection. But it looks like the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has done their homework, and they've decided to take them to court, and they're suing them. And I want to go over the points. Uh, Number one, of why they're taking them to court, and why they will win. Because and I talk about this when I'm talking about the debt that's being sold onto the market. Midland Funding is one of the biggest debt buyers that is out there, of old debt, actually, debt really that is past statute of limitations. But when we talk about validation and getting that letter in the mail, it's always like the solution is to get them right at the beginning. When you get that letter and you do that debt validation, and if you do that right, they will leave you alone, because they don't want to they number one, they believe that you know something that you shouldn't know, and they don't want to deal with you. They'll go and deal with the people that aren't going to be educated, or really that just don't know how to respond. You could send them a letter and not really know everything about that letter, but if that letter is constructed the right way, they're going to back off and leave you alone. But let's just go down the list here. This is what they've done. This is what they've done. Let's go. This the reasons why they are suing them. Count one. Count one. They violated the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. They violated this order, suing without an OA. They call it OALD, and that stands for Original Account Level Documents. Original account level documents. Now, what I always talk about in my videos, what I talk about when you're responding to a court summons, is that they have to do more than just give you like a statement, more than just this is the last statement that they made, or this is the last three statements that they didn't pay. That is not account level documentation. They need everything about your account balance, interest rates disclosures documents, or that they showed that they disclosed the interest rate, payoff balances, all of the payments that you made. If you're coming at someone to say that you owe this debt, you got to have everything to prove that the person owes the debt, and everything to prove and substantiate the amount that you're coming after the person for. You can't just throw any amounts out there. So that was number one. And then under number two, legal collections without required disclosures, where they didn't disclose to people either when they called or when they sent out information, uh, to say that the proper disclosures. Because if they're when you call in to a debt collector, they have to disclose to you that they're attempting to collect the debt and try to do all types of things. But what I've heard some debt collectors do, they'll set up this other LLC, and that LLC is just going to be like the hound department, where they're going to put pressure on the person and say all these types of things, and they're not going to record nothing. And maybe I'm not saying that they got caught doing this, but this sounds uh, like they might have done that because uh, why would if you're recording everything, why would you break that rule? If you're recording everything, why would you break that rule? The next thing, it didn't provide the account level information, the documentation within the 30-day period, which is something that we've actually started experiencing right now with some debt collectors where we do the validation and then they send back a letter saying, oh, we validated it. That's not validating a debt. So they're actually getting sued for not doing it because they just thought that people were just sending out letters that maybe they got a whole bunch of them that look the same and they're like, oh, don't respond because they're not going to do nothing. Well, we see that the next step that happened was that people complained about it, and now Midland, at least Midland right now, got in trouble for it. Here's the next one. Uh, they're getting sued. This is still in count one. Time bar debt, making people pay without disclosures of debt that is past statute of limitations. This is happening all the time. People don't know their rights. They don't know the legal statute of limitations on paying a debt for their specific state. And they end up paying, and then they're like, I watched that video from Steve YouTube, the credit repair shop, and he said, I don't have to pay this, but you said I had to pay it. Well, enough people complained about Midland doing that, and they got caught, and this is in count one of the lawsuit. The next one is collect or attempt to collect on time barred debt without required disclosure. In a video that I made maybe about a year ago, I had stated that uh, we were looking at settling a debt for a client, and I just, for some reason, they said that they got a call from them and it just sounded strange. And I said, okay, well, let our office call them. When we called that debt collector, the debt collector actually told me on the phone, this debt is past they use a different phrase for it. If they would have just came right out and said, you don't have to pay this debt because it's past statute of limitations, would have said, well, they're not going to pay this debt and cease all collection activities. But they changed the verbiage. They changed the words around, but the words mean the same thing. That's the trouble with our English language. Like when people, I know a lot of people from other countries, and they tell me, one of the hardest things about learning English is that you have several words that mean the same thing. But if you don't know that, you could be somebody could be saying something to you, and it's like I don't know what you're talking about, but they say it with the word that you already know. They're like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Well, they use different words with when people called in, and this debt collection company was all they did was buy time barred debt and or past statute time barred debt. Here we go. Time barred debt is the same as debt that's past statute of limitations. There we go, right there. The two. You call a debt collector and they say this debt is past time barred, and we're just letting you know that this debt is time barred debt. And you're like, okay, time barred? What? I got more time to pay or less time to pay? That's what time barred debt means. And so they're in trouble for not disclosing to people that they didn't have to pay debt that was past statute of limitations. And people are doing this. These companies are making millions of dollars. And Midland has gotten in trouble for it. They're being sued, and several other companies. So going down the list here, count two is deceptive practices. Uh, let's see, misleading people about what they're going to do if you don't pay the debt. According to the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, if they say that they're going to sue you, did you know that if a debt collector says that they're going to sue you, that they have to sue you? They cannot threaten to sue you. And you might be saying, well, Steve, how am I going to do anything about it? They threatened me, but they didn't sue me. You ask for the recordings and then you make a complaint. And you will win $1,000 with that complaint, or they're going to be forced to sue you. But here's the problem. If they made that threat didn't sue you, time period went by, and that you get that recording, which they have to release that recording to you, um, you'll automatically win because they cannot threaten to sue you if they don't take you to court. Um, and count two is basically a repeat of all of them. It was, let's see here, reading. Yeah, really just going after unenforceable debt that was past statute of limitations. They actually placed that into its own count two. Then count three is section 807, which doesn't, it says don't do anything deceptive or misleading, and provides examples. No false representation as the legal status of the debt, which is where a lawyer has to review that debt. When they take that debt to court, even though they may not do it, but a lawyer will have to sign an affidavit when they forward that to the court. And they cannot say that a lawyer actually read your file. That's why when you call a debt collection company, they'll say, I am not an attorney, I'm a representative or blah, 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 and this is an attempt to collect a debt. But they give you a false representation that a lawyer has reviewed the file. And if you just know to ask the right questions, they will either hang up or they will say no. It just depends on what type of debt collection company it is. But obviously, Midland is not this type because they got in trouble. And then prohibits threats about taking actions. Cannot threaten to take legal action if they don't take legal action. They cannot do that. A lot of people don't know that. They cannot do that. Uh, let's see here. And then they just repeat more. Oh, they're saying that the original documents were false. That's why when some people say, like, Steve, you're like getting people out of paying debts, or you're making deadbeats get away with not paying debts. I'm not making people get away with not paying debts. I'm making people who have purchased debt, which are debt collectors like Midland Funding, purchase debt. I'm making them prove to the debtor that Midland Funding has all the appropriate documentation to make them pay. That's what I do. And this is one of the things that in count three of the lawsuit, they said that when people made those requests of those documents, they falsified documents. You have a right to review all documents pertaining to any debt that they claim you owe. You have a right to review all of them and make sure that everything is in proper order. They actually falsified debt. Lawsuits, and also again repeat in count three. They're really going after them. They're going to make them settle this because they're repeating in the different counts. Well, no, this is where they did lawsuits on time barred debt were misleading. In some of the court summons where I got information uh, from the ones that we did the pro se defense for, making a response, they would make statements in there that could not be substantiated because they were not part of the company that had the original debt. We see this all the time. They make these affidavits, but they do that because they believe that people are not going to, number one, show up to court. Number two, if they show up to court, they're going to fight that they don't owe the debt rather than fight the materials that they're trying to prove to show that you owe the debt. That's where you get the debt collectors like Midland to say we want to dismiss this court, where they'll call your name and they have that response to that court summons, and you're not fighting about the amounts. Well, you're not fighting about that you did or didn't have an account with that company. You're fighting that did Midland do their job, their due diligence on everything on the debt that they purchased, which they never or rarely do. Rarely do. Let's see here. The next one in count three was consumers did not have legally enforceable obligation to pay these time barred debts. So they told people that they had to pay those debts, but they did not have anything legal that's enforceable to make them pay the debt. But obviously, they got people in the court and they had people pay those debts. So you can see that even going up in front of judges, people went up there and they stood up there and they did not have their court summons responses right. They basically just said, I don't know what I'm going to do about this debt, rather than challenging the documentation that they prove everything about the debt. You will win 99.9% of the time, and that 1% of the time is if you get in front of a judge that is just not consumer friendly. But no judge should ever make you pay a debt that you prove is time barred, that you just go in there and you say, I'm basing my defense on this debt being past statute of limitations to be able to legally collect in our state. If you want to read more about this, you can, go online and type in CFPB sues Midland funding credit management for violating FDCPA, Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. This was submitted on September 8th, 2020. All right, if you find yourself in the unfortunate situation of having a debt collector coming after you, first thing that you need to do is you need to check to see if the debt is past statute of limitations or time barred, which means that they cannot legally collect it. How do you find that out? Go to your credit reports, get the ones that's a paid monitoring service, because it's going to have more of that information. I invite you to go to the website that I have listed here, your3scores.com. Get that, look at it, see when the last activity was on that debt, and then you will know if it's past statute of limitations by going to my website, thecreditrepairshop.com. Go to my blog. In the search bar, type in statute of limitations. You will have to sign up for a free membership. It's 100% free, but you will have access to information that I wanted to place in there for people, so I know who's actually looking at it. And but you get that, and then if it's past that, then you could use a letter that I have here. The link is below here. Cease and desist all collection activities. Um, because it's past statute of limitations to collect in your state. I made that letter for you. If it's not past statute of limitations for your state, do the debt validation before they get it to a court summons. If it's at a court summons, you have to do the debt validation with the court summons, and you have to answer all of the questions in that court summons. And I have a service that I do that also for you. And I'm also going to be putting together and releasing this week a do-it-yourself court summons response uh, program, where all you have to do is watch the video and I'll show you how to do the response. And that will help people who cannot afford the $99 service fee that we have for that. All right, this is Stephen A. Williams, president and founder of thecreditrepairshop.com. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you get notified of new videos that are coming out. Thank you, and until next time.